Hello, everybody. I am here. I am back from New York City. Got an extra day there because of flight delay, so I'm not complaining about that, and that is why you did not get a live stream last night. Although it would have been pushing it a little bit anyway. But it is the time of mourning here on the channel. We are mourning the 2022-2023 Kansas State men's basketball season that fell just short of the Final Four, and I was literally about the distance from me to my camera away from K-State's bench to watch it all happen in Madison Square Garden. So especially painful for your boy here. Especially painful. That is the request tonight that I'm sure every single one of you will lovingly honor. Be kind, be nice. Rough times for your boy here trying to get over it being that bleeping close to a Final Four and being able to just watch from like 10 feet away Marquise Noel cut down nets at Madison Square Garden. It was that close. It was also, as Christian says, an experience with piping hot glass. It was quite the experience. I know you guys are here for realignment. We're going to talk about Fresno State's president trying to push Fresno into the Big 12. We're going to talk about what exactly the hell is going on with Fox and the Pac-12. We've got a lot of other Pac-12 nuggets from John Wilner and John Canzano, but I got to tell you some of the story of the experience at Madison Square Garden, selfishly, if for no other reason. So if you're watching it taped and you don't care for this, whatever, scroll forward. This is your warning to do so now. So I go to New York, right, on kind of a whim. Shout out to Fremont Airlines, a very lovely listener of Fremont for helping me get there. But I go to New York on a whim. I couldn't plan anything until after the game Thursday night because I didn't want to jinx it. Of course, that being the game that K-State won against Michigan State in overtime. Then all of a sudden, it's Friday. I'm deciding to go. I've got, like 20 hours to get ready to go fly out there. I get there. So I'm at Madison Square Garden with my guy Cole, who hosts the Fremont podcast with me. And we pay, I paid a lot of money for a pretty good seat, man. Pretty good seat. First tier, like section 109 with K-State fans. And it's probably 30 minutes before the game. I'm real excited, like in the moment. This is crazy. K-State, Madison Square Garden, a regional final. Just an awesome, awesome thing. And I just hear this like from behind me. And I was like, what was that? It sounded like the seats broke or something, like something snapped. And I like turn around and Cole, my buddy, is like, man, this really hurts. Like, what was that? He was like, God, like I got hit. And he's like trying to figure out if someone threw something at him. And suddenly we look down at the ground and there's this piece of glass. There is just a piece of glass on the ground that's probably like palm sized, maybe a little bit bigger, jagged edges and all. And we go down to pick it up and it's like hot, like scalding hot. And so that's when we start to put this together like, oh, that wasn't like someone throwing something. That fell from the ceiling. That was a light, like a light bulb at Madison Square Garden from the ceiling that came down and hit Cole in the shoulder. And so then we're like, all right. It was a whole thing. Like the people a couple rows in front of us, same thing happened to them. Someone that was walking down the stairs, same thing happened to them. So we're like talking to all the security people there or whatever and trying to orchestrate like a move because I didn't want to sit in the seats anymore, right? Like I'm trying not to die from a shard of glass falling from the ceiling at the same place where the Knicks fart out a sub 500 season every year, not trying to go out that way. And so they like eventually move us, but they moved us like right behind the basket. It was basically like the student section. Kind of frustrating, but kind of cool. You're like right there, but also you can't really see what's going on. Anyway, it was just a whole thing. CBS camera guy was there the whole time. If you go watch the replay of the game, you'll see me a handful of times. And then my buddy Cole winds up getting memed at the end of the game, being the K-State fan that was just like petrified, like just down in the dumps right after the game. They find him for the shot there. And I'm in the corner, and I would say that I held my poise fairly well. To be completely honest, but it was just a wild experience. Like I had my vibe totally killed for this exciting trip, this exciting game, like right before the game with a shard of flying, scalding hot glass. And then, so I'm mad at Madison Square Garden. Like Cole and we got Doug Sermon. I saw someone ask about Doug Sermons earlier. got Doug Sermons to acknowledge us when we were telling him to go check something on the monitor early on. And then, may or may not have gotten another official to recognize us at halftime because we were just that close. Anyway, there was just a lot going on. And unfortunately, it was a soul-crushing loss as K-State, who has more Elite Eights than all but 6 programs in NCAA history, more Elite Eights than all but 6 programs in NCAA history, has not been to a Final Four since 1964, which means 8 straight losses in the Elite Eight. And I think that is the worst way to end your season. The most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching way is to be just shy of the Final Four. I've now seen it 3 times in my lifetime. This time I got to see it in person. All right. I did enjoy the trip to New York. So that was cool. It was an experience, but I am struggling with grappling with the reality of the situation here. Okay. Here we go. You guys know how this works. I already told you what's going on. Look, we can talk outside of just realignment stuff. You want to talk Rodney Terry getting the job at Texas. I was certainly happy to see that on a couple of different fronts earlier today. But we're going to talk about these Fresno State, I guess I'll call them rumors. We're going to talk about the Fresno State president. We're going to talk about what's going on with Fox and the Pac-12 and a little bit more from our favorite cast of characters in Pac-12 country. As you guys know, if you've been here before, you can dictate some of the content on the show. You can do so by hitting the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you can leave a question or comment for me. Guarantees that it will get on the chat tonight. It will pin it up at the top above everybody else. Make sure that you get on there. We've got over 100 people in the chat. I won't be able to keep up with everything. That is the only way that you're going to get your question or comment here on the show tonight. Click that $ below the chat box where it says say something. Not only are you therefore making your voice heard, dictating the content, but you're supporting the work I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis. Could not do it with all your guys' support, and I sincerely do appreciate it. Totally free way to support the channel too is to just simply go like the video. We also appreciate that if you can do that. Just one click, just go like the video. That is it. If you're watching after, leave a comment under the video, whether you love me, you hate me, whatever it might be. All of that helps me with the YouTube algorithm, so please do that. And if you, again, are catching it after the fact, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to support the channel that way as well. All right, there's the table setter. Now we're off and running. Rise and Shout. What's up, Rise and Shout? Thank you for being here. Rise and Shout, what's your final Pac-12, Big 12 expansion prediction? I don't know, man. I mean, I don't mean to like blow off your question, but that's a fool's errand. That's kind of an impossible question, I feel like, to answer. It can change drastically. And without really knowing what's going on with the Pac-12 TV deal, without knowing those numbers, it's just hard to say. I don't know. There's been an awful lot of smoke. I think the Big 12 is definitely going to add, but I feel like there's a better chance that that's going to happen on the basketball side. I think the basketball thing is pretty legit. I think adding multiple basketball schools and trying to separate the basketball TV rights from the football TV rights to make an extra chunk of money is something that is legitimately going to have legs to it. And I also think it's something that could be more financially viable than most of us had even thought or prognosticated at this point. Like, I think the Big 12 stands to legitimately make some money off of that if it does all come to fruition. We're talking like UConn, St. John's, Villanova, Gonzaga, that whole sort of basketball dream. I do think there are some legs to that. So we'll see how that comes. And if that does, and that does wind up in a big chunk of money for the rest of the schools, maybe that helps entice some of the Pac-12 schools, but it's just really difficult without knowing what the numbers are going to be on that Pac-12 TV deal. And the Pac-12 has been so tight-lipped about it. So and a part of this, Rise and Shout, I hope you'll understand, is that I try very hard not to be the channel that's like, hey, I've got inside sources on this and inside sources on that and just pulling things here or there. And here's I just react to the news as it's happening in real time. So I'll take a sort of similar stance to like what Wilner has done the whole time. I mean, I would still say it's maybe 30-70 that Four Corners schools wind up joining the Big 12, but that's kind of just a total shot in the dark because we really just have no idea. Kliavkoff has been so tight-lipped about what's going on with that Pac-12 TV deal that I don't it is difficult to make a wise prediction on it. McMuffin, what's up, McMuffin? Appreciate you being here. Yes, McMuffin, I did see the payouts from the NCAA tournament per conference. I can pull that up for you real quick. The Big 12 did better than anybody else in terms of money per school. Here you go. So you get a unit for every tournament. I forget if it's tournament win or tournament appearance. The SEC had the most with 17. The Big 12 had 16. So gross overall payout, the SEC outdueled the Big 12 just barely, 34 mil compared to 32 mil. But when you divide it by teams, then the Big 12 came out ahead. So your Big 12 per team payout is $3.2 million. The Big East is $2.7 million. The SEC 2.4, Big 10 2.0. The Pac-12 all the way down behind the West Coast Conference, the Mountain West, the ACC, everybody, the Pac-12 at 1.16. So the Big 12 made almost three times as much money as the Pac-12 from the NCAA tournament per team. So that's nothing small. I mean, part of the problem that the Pac-12 is having right now is that they're getting nickel and dimed all over the place. Like they're losing money. What was it going to be, like $5 million per school on the Comcast thing? They have the dispute over the extra money that was being paid by the TV partner to the Pac-12 networks and all that. That's costing them money. They're losing money here by not having very good NCAA tournaments. They're already behind the Big 12 in terms of what payouts are right now. So yeah, not the greatest of times financially, certainly for the Pac-12 right now. So, hey, Rise and Shout, I appreciate it. Rise and Shout. Thank you for being understanding about that. I just don't want to be like hot take realignment guy, but that's kind of the temperature on where things are at right now. All right, we can get into the Fresno State piece of this, and I saw plenty of chatter about that from you guys in the chat when we first got rolling here. I've told you all along, I don't think that this is very legitimate. I do not think that the Big 12 is legitimately interested in Fresno. I'm sure there have been some due diligence phone calls, some form of due diligence contact going on there between Yormark and Fresno State, but I feel like that's been taken and run with by not just Fresno, but John Canzano, who's the only one out there that really seems to mention it. Wilner, I guess, will every now and then, but we've seen Canzano drop it in a couple of times because I think it fits his narrative to do so. And he's probably either hearing that from Pac-12 fans or Pac-12 sources, rather, or Fresno State sources, both of whom would have a vested interest in trying to have it get out there that, oh, the Big 12 is legitimately interested in Fresno State. All right, so here's the article. It says, outside of those we've really been focusing on, a new school has emerged as a potential expansion target for the Big 12 Conference. I believe, so the original report here was from the San Joaquin Valley Sun. I am reading from Heartland College Sports. But it says, the league is now showing interest in Fresno State University, according to a report by the San Joaquin Valley Sun, who received the confirmation from President Saul Jimenez Sandoval. As a part of the report, the Sun stated that during a Thursday meeting on Measure E, a sales tax initiative that would benefit academic and athletics projects at Fresno State, Jimenez Sandoval mentioned there is interest on the Big 12 side regarding the Bulldogs, with the league looking to establish a presence on the West Coast. If passed, which 24/7 Sports detailed, Measure E could be the bridge to upgrades for Fresno State that would at least boost the school's candidacy to join a Power 5 conference. Per the Sun, targeted projects include a $160 million renovation project to Valley Children's Stadium and a $47 million renovation of the Duncan Athletic Center. I presume that those would be the two main, the stadium and the arena that they're playing in. But I mean, this all just screams to me. And that's really all it is. By the way, all of this just screams to me like, hey, trying to push forward this initiative. What was it? Measure E. Measure E. They're trying to push forward this Measure E. They're trying to push forward facility enhancements right now and trying to leverage anything you can. So if you've ever had so much as a text from Brett Yormark, then you're probably trying to leverage it right now if you're Fresno State, when you need the money and you need to put pressure on people to try and get these upgrades going. This is definitely the time to try and strike if you are Fresno, and I don't blame them one bit for doing this, but I also don't believe this to be legitimate Big 12 interest. I would believe this to be some sort of passing interest, due diligence type of thing, and now it is being run with by both Fresno State and the Pac-12 propaganda machine. It is really leverage, and especially when you think about everything that the Big 12 has going on right now. Someone just asked a second ago, Rise and Shout asked a second ago, what do you think about? I mean, is the Big 12 going to actually wind up with anybody from the Pac 12 in the league? You got that. So you're working on four corners, perhaps. You're also working on the basketball thing, which, again, I do believe has legitimate legs to it, which would be Gonzaga, St. John's, Creighton, I think is one of the other ones been mentioned, UConn. Villanova, trying to create the basketball powerhouse league and then monetize those rights, sell the basketball rights separately. I think that's legit. So there are two much more viable financially options on the table for you to expand and broaden the league's horizons. Why would you be legitimately interested in Fresno State here at this point? Plus, I'll even throw this in. We now have the ACC in, I would say, somewhat up in arms here. You now have the ACC in a position where trouble is there. Trouble has hit the home front for the ACC, where you have the big boys. You've got Florida State, you've got Miami, was it North Carolina, the other one, where you've now had athletic directors, people in administrative positions talking about wanting unequal revenue sharing and just talking about the reality of their situation, that they are going to be woefully behind their peers, mainly for them in the SEC, because I think that's what a lot of these schools are really worried about. Florida State feels like, hey, we can't, like Florida State and Miami, we can't fall that far behind Florida financially because we're competing with them. We can't be doing that. So they're starting to feel the pressure of that and trying to push through their side of that agenda, which means just trouble could be on the horizon here. There's always been this flirtation supposedly with the ACC grant of rights and how would it actually hold up in court. I mean, if any of that's going to go down, you want to be there ready and waiting to pounce on that. Those are three options that are all at least somewhat viable at this point or in the near to medium future. Why are you going to be adding dilutive Fresno State here at this point? It does not make any sense, but it makes sense why the Bulldogs would push that if there has been any contact, and it makes sense why John Canzano would push that if there has been any contact actually made there. I mean, nothing against Fresno State. I've not forgotten the ass kickings that K-State took at the hands of Fresno State in 2004 and 2007, I want to say is what that was. That series way back in the day. I remember it, man. I remember Pat Hill coming in and wrecking shop, but not a very good expansion candidate for the Big 12. Not a good one. I mean, maybe if you were in like a desperate scenario, but the Big 12 is not at all in a desperate scenario. That's kind of the picture that I'm trying to paint for you, is like the Big 12 is in a position where they can be choosy about what they're going to do expansion-wise because they got the four best that were out there, got all that shored up. They now have the TV deal signed. They don't legitimately need to be in a hurry. You know, I keep reading, I read again from Canzano about, hey, the Pac-12 can be kind of patient here. They don't care what everybody thinks. They can be patient because they're not negotiating against any other Power Five, like any other leagues out there, any other entities. And like, that's all fine and good. But I would argue still that there is much more sense of urgency needed there because you are kind of desperate. The Big 12 is not at all in that state. Big 12 is not there. On San Diego State, because they are obviously advancing to the Final Four. And if we have any San Diego State fans in here, congratulations. You guys definitely deserve it. Especially after I was reading somebody the other day about San Diego State getting screwed in the COVID year, having a great team there. And I very much respect the San Diego State basketball program. The whole San Diego is like the actual athletics that'll go into the Pac-12. I mean, I have no doubt that San Diego State will compete the second that they get into the Pac-12. The thing that's been really interesting to me to read about that is that the narrative has picked up over on that side of the tracks in Pac-12 country. The narrative has really picked up with those guys that it's now a slam dunk. Like San Diego State has to be in because they made the Final Four. Like that's the be all end all. The Pac-12 would be stupid not to add them. Now, Yes, I do think the Pac-12 would be stupid not to add them. They're going to need somebody. They need some inventory. San Diego State is, I think, the most equipped to handle it, just from an athletic standpoint right now. Plus, they just so happen to be in Southern California, which is another very added bonus for the Pac-12. So it makes all the sense in the world, and they should be doing that. What I don't understand is when all we talk about is basketball doesn't really matter in realignment unless you're going to be like your mark and try and build just the super power league. It just doesn't really matter all that much in realignment and with money. And so, like, why is it now all of a sudden like this is the thing? I mean, San Diego State should have been a shoe-in easily beforehand. I don't understand why them making the Final Four, Wilner and Canzano were both all over that. Like, hey, this is the thing. Now they've got to be in. I mean, like, I guess I get it because I think they need to be in anyway. I just don't. The timing of it and using basketball as a justification seems a bit weird to me. But I'll read you from this article. This is Wilner that I'm reading. San Diego State edged Creighton on Sunday to qualify for the first Final Four in school history, and in the process did the Pac-12 a gigantic favor. The Aztecs removed any lingering doubt about their credentials for the Pac-12 membership. The university presidents who run the conference have no choice, none, zero zip, but to invite the Aztecs. That's probably a good thing for the Pac-12, considering the barrage of bad decisions at the presidential level over the past 10 to 12 years. And here is basically, I'm raising that question, right? Like, why now? Why are you choosing a Final Four, a basketball-related event, to be the trigger here for everything that should make it a slam dunk for the Pac-12 to add San Diego State? Here is Wilner's response. I mean, to his credit, he answers the question. He says, sure, football drives athletic revenue and conference realignment, but basketball isn't irrelevant in the calculation, especially when the Pac-12 is about to lose its top basketball brand in UCLA. The Aztecs would join the conference as one of its 2 or 3 best programs, a tick below Arizona perhaps, but alongside Oregon, and it's not like they would lower the caliber of the Pac-12 football product either. But there's more to the calculation than competitive success, financial impact, and institutional alignment. The Pac-12 desperately needs a win, folks. Not a win on the court or on the field, a win where it matters most in the realm of public opinion. It needs to hand constituents and stakeholders something they can feel good about, something that can change the narrative and brighten the optics. So there you have it. That is what the justification is, that, first of all, athletically, it does make some sense, but mainly the Pac-12 just needs a PR win. That's what it's all about. And I guess I would just question how much of a PR win that would really be. I believe wholeheartedly San Diego State should be in. They obviously they deserve the opportunity. They also, I think the Pac-12 needs them. So I think it's a marriage that needs to happen. But I do still feel like you're not doing yourself a ton of good with that. I mean, nationally, are people going to look at that and be like, oh, man, Pac-12 is right back on track. They got San Diego State. And it's nothing against San Diego State. I'll even go back to the Big 12. When the Big 12 added the 4 schools that it did, clearly that's been very important. Clearly it's been very stabilizing for the league. But that was not something looked at nationally by a lot of people and being like, oh, wow, what a terrific move here for the Big 12. They are going to be stronger than ever. No, it was kind of made fun of. And you had people out there, probably the same truck stop conference sort of crowd that are looking at it like, okay, so you're the AAC plus, like, all right, awesome. That's kind of how it was viewed. And those 4 schools, I would put all 4 above San Diego State in the real pecking order here. I mean, certainly they are at San Diego State's level or above, all 4 that were added by the Big 12. So I just can't see that nationally being as big a win as perhaps Wilner is making that out to be. Maybe to those of us who follow it a little bit closer, it would seemingly be a little bit more of a win. I don't think that if the Pac-12 stays together, I mean, I firmly believe they're going to add San Diego State. I don't have any lack of trust in that. I mean, they've already shown their hand with how desperate they are on the realignment front by having Kliavkoff just go publicly and hang out at an SMU basketball game. Like, we know that they are clearly in a spot where they have to go add somebody. It's going to be San Diego State if that league sticks together. I think that's the whole point, is like they've got to focus and are trying to focus on getting all the ducks in a row on the other stuff. Even if it's announced at the same time, they've got to get their ducks in a row on the other stuff first. So it feels to me like it was already going to happen. And we all kind of know this. Anybody who's following this with any level of, any closely at all, anybody kind of realizes this. So I don't know what the real impact is in terms of it being a win for the Pac-12. It wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt, but I scoff at that a little bit. Goes on to say, adding SDSU in the immediate afterglow of its run to the Final Four would be perceived as a victory, as a move that makes sense in the short term and over the long haul, that shows the conference's leadership team knows what it's doing. Just imagine the optics if the Pac-12 were to pass on the Aztecs. The Big 12 would gobble them up in a nanosecond, gaining a vital recruiting foothold in the greater Southern California region, and deal the Big 12 a crushing strategic blow that the conference would regret for decades. Now, that's a very interesting paragraph there, speaking so confidently and assuredly that the Big 12 would go add San Diego State in a second. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that. But again, keep in mind, you've got all the basketball thing going on. You're still waiting for 4 corner schools in the Pac-12. You're also thinking about the ACC. It feels to me like there's still a lot out there that would take precedent over San Diego State in that scenario for the Big 12. So, it would definitely be a blunder if you kept the conference going and for whatever reason did not invite them. Yes, I do think that would be a blunder for the Pac-12. That is the best candidate out there by far. They need to go get them if that league is going to continue. So I get what Wilner is saying. I just disagree on how much of a PR win it would actually be. But if it's really just, hey, the Pac-12 needs something, anything, little, minor, tiny win, yes, it would be a minor win. It would be a minor win for the Pac-12 if that were to happen. Just interesting timing here with the Final Four thing and really pushing all in on the Final Four elements of it. I scoffed at that a bit. Like, hey, this should have been a done deal before. I don't know why a basketball Final Four really matters all that much because one is basketball and two, it still is. It's just like the one-off accomplishment. Like they don't become a blue blood because of that. San Diego State is already like in kind of the next tier of basketball programs that were there. I don't know why this makes that much of a difference. I digress. Julius, thank you, Julius. Always appreciate you being here. Always immensely appreciate your support. Thank you for being so generous. As always, my friend, thank you. Julius says, howdy, John. Once again, the only thing I have to say is go Cougs. Thanks for the hard work and great content. Hey, you're welcome. My gift to you, Julius. Thank you. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for being here. Shout out to BYU fans, by the way, for really blowing that video up that I did right before I left that I had releasing. I think that was on Friday that actually dropped and released about the Pac-12 and BYU and the article from the Desert News that was written about that situation and how BYU could have added $240 million to a potential Pac-12 TV deal had they actually decided to do that instead of just thumbing their nose at BYU for as long as they have. And now BYU kind of gets the last laugh on that front. So happy for you, Julius, on that. And I also am very grateful to you guys for enjoying that content and watching the hell out of that content. Christian, what's up, Christian? Christian, appreciate you being here. Thank you, my friend. Christian says, Pac-12ers have seen the same updates and articles as us, and they insist they're fine. These are the same people who watched the whole series of Lost and still swear they were dead the whole time. Interesting reference. I watched most of Lost. I never made it all the way through. But isn't the deal that they're supposed to be like in purgatory or something? I feel like that was what people told me the finish was. That was the interpretation many people had of the finish of it. Anyway, yeah, it is very much, I would hearken it more to like, in a way, the ink blot test. I believe that was like the Rorschach test. Let me get the name. I don't want to be too much of an idiot here. Yeah, the Rorschach test. Anyway, you show someone just splattered ink. One person will look at it. It's the exact same thing. One person will look at it and see something completely different than the next person that comes up to look at it. So 2 people can look at the same thing and see totally different things. It's a synopsis, honestly, of just the country and the world right now, that people will take whatever facts they have, whatever the information is, spin it to their side. They're going to believe it's good for them, bad for the guys they don't like. It's the exact same thing that's happening here with the Big 12, Pac-12 stuff. At this point, we've leaned all the way into that. It didn't start totally there, but just gradually, with every news cycle, with every story that's come, we have gotten further and further into that being the unfortunate reality of the situation, which is just that like everybody thinks that they are right. Everybody thinks that new information that comes out supports their point. Everybody bends things to help out their point, and I'm not even saying like I'm above that. Like I say on the chant, like you get a Big 12 slant if you're coming here. My main frustration throughout this process has been a lack of admission on the Pac-12 side that the same thing is going on over there. So I try to keep it real with you. We do the same sorts of things over here on the Big 12 side, although I think, as we've seen from the national media, any neutral observer certainly views the Big 12 as being in a better spot than the Pac-12 right now. Doesn't mean that the Pac-12 is going to fold, but most people believe the Big 12 is in a more advantageous position right now if you're looking at it from a neutral point of view. However, we do certainly take things, and sometimes, like I've mentioned multiple times, the Dennis Dodd article that was like comparing Yormark to Paul McCartney, probably a little much going on over there. So anyway, that's basically where we're at, Christian. So I agree with you that these Pac-12 folks think too highly of the position that they are in. They don't realize or don't want to believe the amount of danger that I think they are actually in. Even if it's still not the most likely outcome to happen, you are playing with fire. Basically, the Pac-12 is really playing with fire right now. I don't think enough of them are giving legitimate credence to that. So I will say that. If you want to be like Christian and Julius, donate to the channel. Make sure your voice gets heard here on the chat tonight with almost 300 people here in the chat right now. Please click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. In order to do so, we'll pin your chat up at the top for me, supersede everything else. Make sure that you get on the show here tonight, a way for you to dictate the content and a way for you to support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis. Speaking of Yormark there, I did see him very briefly at Madison Square Garden. Unfortunately, I did not see him until literally, and again, as I said, I'm on like row 2, right by the K-State bench, adjacent to it. So like under the basket, but to the right of the K-State bench, row 2. I'm like right there. And the one time I saw Brett Yormark, he went walking by right after the game, as I'm like peak dejected and just love the guy, love Yormark, but was not in the mood to really fawn over that or yell how much I loved him from the second row or anything like that. I saw him and I was like, oh, well, would have been nice before the game when I was a little more, chatty, jacked, excited, all of those things. My timing was not good on seeing Brett Yormark at Madison Square Garden. Okay, so what's actually going on with Fox? Another video that I dropped right before I left was, of course, the one about the situation going on with Fox. And this goes back to the point that Christian just made. We can see the same sort of information and spin it two different ways. I believe that's exactly what's going on with the Fox thing. So quick recap. John Canzano really shook things up by tweeting out that sources were telling him Fox was still involved in the Pac-12 media rights negotiations. It had kind of been common knowledge or common thought anyway from most involved in this for a while that Fox was basically out on the Pac-12. The Sports Business Journal had said that multiple times, but with the caveat like, hey, I'm sure if the price came way down, if it was a bargain basement sort of price, maybe Fox would be interested in some of the inventory, but not at what the Pac-12 is going to want it to be. I think what we have now is everybody taking the same sort of, like, Fox maybe is still a possibility. There's been talk of games like on FS1 to just fill some time slots there with some Pac-12 inventory. It would not be an overwhelming part of the deal, just be a little bit. And maybe they're still interested if the price comes down, if the price is at a certain point. And so if that discussion has been had, then it would behoove you, if you're the Pac-12, to say, hey, John Canzano, we just spoke with a Fox rep about this. They would still be interested potentially if it comes down to X, Y, and Z. Or maybe you don't even have to explain that to Canzano. You just say, hey, we just had a discussion with them. They're still involved here to a degree. And then Canzano tweets that out to try and win a PR cycle, win a media cycle. Hey, Fox actually is still involved. There are more major players involved here than what we initially thought. Immediately after that happened, we got Brett McMurphy and Dennis Dodd saying that their multiple sources were cited, that multiple sources said that was not the case, and that Fox has been out of the media negotiation cycle with the Pac-12 for a long time. So that was what we had. I said it in that video, and I definitely still believe it now. I think it's probably these two things are not mutually exclusive. Probably very well could be both, and both sides are just taking that and trying to play it to their advantage. Brett McMurphy, when we say both sides, I don't think Brett McMurphy really has anything to gain by that, but perhaps he is being, I don't know. I would just say that McMurphy is a more neutral guy with probably more industry sources as opposed to Pac-12 sources. Again, think about who would be feeding these people information. Canzano is getting his info from people within the Pac-12 who have a PR crisis on their hands right now and are trying to get any positive win they can get. McMurphy doesn't have to worry about that. I don't really think he's trying to deliberately push anything for the Big 12, but he does not have to worry or think about what's going on the Pac-12 side there and what Canzano is getting from his sources. But Wilner addressed it in his mailbag, so I wanted to give you what John Wilner had to say because I thought, it was solid here. He gets a question, what's the deal with Fox? And he says, good question. What is the deal with Fox? This week alone, there have been varying reports about Fox's involvement in the Pac-12 media negotiations, none of them mutually exclusive. Fox can be interested in a package of Pac-12 games, but not actively involved at this point. The situation reflects just how nuanced media negotiations can be and just how secretive the Pac-12's process has been. Our view hasn't changed. Fox has a lot of Saturday night broadcast windows on FS1 that are currently devoted to Pac-12 content and must be filled in the next contract cycle. Sure, it could slot Mountain West matchups and BYU home games into that window, but the network assuredly would want the option for Pac-12 games at the right price, of course. And remember that, at the right price. And Fox is not in a position to really need to overpay here. Pac-12 does not have a lot of leverage there. Wilner continues, that said, there is no indication Fox wants a significant portion of Pac-12 inventory that it will or has bid on the Tier 1 games. Yeah, I don't think that is happening under really any circumstance. It says those negotiations likely involve ESPN, Apple, and Amazon. He goes on to talk about how Fox kind of screwed the Pac-12 over doubly because they rated USC and UCLA to keep what they wanted from the Pac-12 without actually having to keep the entire league. Then they needed to maintain a presence in Texas, and so the Big 12 became a logical way to do that. And I don't really disagree with him a whole ton on what all he's saying there, that Fox did not do the Pac-12 any favors. But I also I don't think that they are like significantly involved or going to be a significant player in the Pac-12's media rights deal here. I think that would be a fallacy to believe that. But is there a chance that they would still get involved at some level for a small portion of it? Yes, I can definitely believe that. So I can see how all sides are actually technically kind of reporting the truth. They're just going at each other again, and you've got people working in some cases in their own self-interest as far as that goes. So Canzano, then I guess I should read you what Canzano said about it too. Canzano is the one that, guys, I'll be honest, when I start reading his mailbags and reading what he has to say, I wind up rolling my eyes every two lines. Like Wilner, it's always fine. Like I'll read it and come away and feel like, okay, yeah, like I get it. Canzano's the one where like I'm just rolling my eyes real hard every time I make it through. So he gets a question that says, what happened to the importance of the fourth time window? Obviously referring to the late night slot, Pac-12 after dark, that they have to offer. And he says, the Pacific time zone remains an attractive selling point for the Pac-12 and some others. Fox still has some late FS1 broadcast windows that will need to fill. I was told Wednesday by two Pac-12 sources that Fox is talking with the conference. That was refuted by other media members, but it's what I'm being told, and I trust my sourcing. I'll be curious to see if the Pac-12 ends up with some games on FS1. So everybody's talking about the FS1. I mean, even Canzano was kind of admitting here, we're talking about minor stuff. Games on FS1, they don't rate well. That's been covered ad nauseum by guys like Sam Bradshaw at 365 Sports, who's done a really good job breaking down the TV numbers. This is not the most significant part of it. That's why, to me, it all boils down to, again, very sensibly lining up to be a play by the Pac-12 to try and win a news cycle here, to leak that information, even if they're not really all that seriously involved with Fox. Where was the he's always referencing Chicken Little. Chicken Little is his truck stop conference that I have noticed here. It looks like the only place that actually he got asked a question: when this whole Pac-12 media rights expansion fiasco is over, what will you title your book about this mess? And Canzano said, "Someone check on Chicken Little," was going to be the title of his book about everything here. He also said, or maybe "Thanks for Nothing, Larry Scott," which to me almost feels like an admission that this thing might end, right? Like if the book after the fact is going to be "Thanks for Nothing, Larry Scott," that's probably like, hey, the demise of the Pac-12. Thanks for nothing, Larry Scott. He clearly put them in a bad position, but George Kliavkoff, I think, has had some missteps here that obviously have not helped at all either. If you're curious, one other John Wilner note that I will drop in here. If you're curious about where John Wilner is at, as far as his sliding scale, his point scale, remember it started at 5.5 point favorite and stuck there for a long time. Pac-12 survival was a 5.5 point favorite over Pac-12 extinction. He then said every week past mid-March, it was going to go down 0.5 point. We should be down further than 4.5 points, but that's where we are at right now. 4.5 points. So I'm going to read you what Wilner said when he was asked about it. He said, when it comes to realignment, the longer a media rights deal takes to complete, the greater the likelihood of an unexpected occurrence. Our odds for Pac-12 survival have dropped to 4.5 points from 5.5, which should come as no surprise. We opted against setting the line 0.5 point lower, at least for the moment, because of the public comments from several presidents over the last 2 weeks. If a situation appeared truly dire behind the scenes, the conference, which has been incredibly disciplined in its messaging, would not have sent them out with talking points. We're seeing that a lot. Okay, that's a very common refrain right now in Pac-12 country, that there's no way that the presidents of Arizona and Arizona State, I think Utah's president got into the mix too, there's no way they would be talking if the deal wasn't at least in a good position. Like, they may not have all the details, it may not be finalized, but they would have to be feeling pretty good about where they're at if they were going to send any of those guys out to actually talk. I think logically that does make some sense, right? Most people in that situation, that would make a lot of sense. We're dealing, though, with George Kliavkoff here, who I would just like to remind everybody already has gaffed very publicly by promising somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million or more per school per team, throwing that out there as the expectation. Maybe promising is the wrong word, but throwing that out there as the expectation to his members, which clearly has not happened, which resulted in all the blaming of the Big 12 for taking their deal and setting too low of a floor and all these problems. George Kliavkoff way overvalued what he had, overpromised, and that created a lot of frustration, which was publicly voiced even by the Arizona State athletic director. You can say what you want about some of the comments and maybe them reflecting better from the Pac-12. I mean, he did come out and say, yeah, like, it's been frustrating. It has definitely been frustrating. George Kliavkoff led them astray initially because of that. He also was publicly saying they were going to catch up to the Big Ten and the SEC financially, which we all know is not going to happen at all. So I would just say recent history on Kliavkoff suggests that could be not true. And here is what Wilner said about it. He said, could Commissioner George Kliavkoff have misread the state of negotiations, leaving the conference exposed to a massive downside surprise and potentially extinction? That scenario seems unlikely, but once again, cannot be ignored until a contract is approved. I don't know that I would say that situation seems unlikely. I would say that is a possibility. That is a possibility for sure, that George Kliavkoff has once again mismanaged a situation here, because we've just seen it happen before. I don't think he should get off the hook there for that and just get this assumed innocence in all of this deal. Like, hey, nothing could possibly be off from that hypothesis that things must be good if they're going to send the presidents out there to do this, because we've seen it before. We've seen it before from this guy, man. We've seen it before. And that's what drives me nuts about the reputation pushed about Yormark being this like sleazy salesman guy. Like, Georgie K's out there on the used car lot, man. If he'd be like a guy from, if you've seen the movie The Goods with Jeremy Piven, just kind of like a sleazy used car salesman out there. Like that's really what Kliavkov has been, and it's not been very flattering to the Pac-12 so far. R Webb, what's up? R Webb, appreciate you being here. Great to hear from you. R Webb says catching the SEC in the Big Ten is a layup. Sincerely, Georgie K. You're right. That's been the reported phrase used by sources inside the Pac-12 that beating that Big 12 deal was going to be a layup. We're going on probably like 3 to 4 weeks from that statement being made, as the clock continues to tick, 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 tick here for the Pac-12 with nothing actually happening. That was one of the things that was in there. It was going to be a layup. So yeah, I'm sure that's what it is, man. Catching the SEC in the Big Ten is a layup for the Pac-12. All right. Really the only other thing I've got for you guys, if you have something real quick, just this is like your 2-3 minute warning. Might cut this one off a little bit early tonight, but click the $ below the chat box where it says say something if you want to make your voice heard on the chat here tonight. If you have a question, you have a comment, whatever it might be, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to make it on tonight. If you could also like the video, I would appreciate it. Totally free way to support the channel. Just one click, just a like. That would be great as well. Make sure to comment on the video, especially if you're catching this after the fact. And you can also support me on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4, if you are catching this after the fact. Rodney Terry got the job. This is where, how you can tell, I did my prep on the plane today as I was flying back from New York City. That was at like 11 o'clock. So it's now official. Texas has announced it. It was tweeted out by the official Texas men's basketball Twitter account, but I'm reading here a report from Chip Brown and Orange Bloods, who had it first. Said Rodney Terry, who led Texas to a Big 12 tourney title in the Elite Eight after taking over for dismissed head coach Chris Beard, will be offered the Longhorns' permanent head coaching position, a high-level university source told Horns 24/7 Sunday night. If an agreement can be reached quickly, an announcement of Terry being named the head coach could come as early as Tuesday. Well, it came tonight. The source said Rodney Terry stepped up and did an amazing, classy job leading this program and absolutely deserves the opportunity. Well, I'm glad to see it just one, like he did do a great job, and I do believe earned the opportunity. I do firmly believe that with his performance this year. Now, does that mean I would have done it if I were Texas? Even as a fan of a school that just hired a longtime assistant coach, I have some skepticism, especially when it's the guy who's like the interim that gets thrown in here. Texas Tech fans can kind of relate to this, right? It is not always the way to go to do this. I still think it is risky. But I do truly believe what's been happening behind the scenes is Texas throwing some major Hail Marys out there. I would guess that none of them have been answered or were really seriously entertained by anybody. And so now you go with Terry. The safer play, one that's going to earn you cred. Future coaches will feel better about the fact that you did this. If you're going to whack an interim who had to step into the crazy situation that he did and took the team to a Big 12 tourney title and an Elite Eight and blew a huge lead, or else there would be a Final Four team, like that's, it's not the greatest thing when you're thinking about the stress and the pressure you're going to be under if you're the next coach coming in or the coach after that, whatever it might be. So the contract, it was like $15.3 million over 5 years. So that's on the lower end, certainly, of what Texas could pay. I'm sure that they were out there talking to like Jay Wright, John Calipari, guys like that, and you could probably throw around like $7-8 million a year. So it's a bargain. And I would also be very curious to see what the buyouts are, because I would think Texas could probably get out of it pretty easily without a lot of hurt if Rodney Terry is struggling after a year or two. But anyway, that I think is where things are at with the Texas job. I also look. I was happy. A lot of people have speculated about would Texas try to go after Jerome Tang. I still would have been doubtful that he would have taken that job, but it would have. I'd be lying if I said it was not a threat. It would have been a threat. So from that standpoint, I was glad to see it happen. But it just felt like the momentum had all been flowing and pushing towards that for a long time. That Rodney Terry was probably going to get that job, and frankly, a lot of it is like he won too much. He won enough that it kind of forced Texas's hand. I wondered because not only did they lose, but they blow a big lead. I wondered, like, is that going to be the ammunition and the bullet in the chamber for Chris Del Conte if he doesn't want to hire him to actually not hire him? But thankfully, that was not actually the case. Hey, what's up, Daniel? I see Daniel, who's been a tropical vacation. Daniel, cat fan in Yucatan land, aka Daniel Osborne. Appreciate you, Daniel. Daniel says, came in late, just got in from the Yucatan. When is the pathetic 12? Oh, pathetic 12. That's a pretty good one. When is the pathetic 12 getting a deal already? Hope you had a great time rooting for the Cats in NYC. Well, thank you, Daniel. Much appreciate you, my friend. Hope you had a great vacation. Enjoyed seeing some of that on Twitter. You talking about your trip. I did have a good time. I had a very good, yesterday was a great day. It was just a explore NYC day. There are a few things on this earth that I enjoy doing more than exploring New York City. One of my favorite places on planet Earth to go visit. I know it's not for everybody. I really love it. And I just love walking around and exploring, going around through the different boroughs. So like I was in Harlem. I went to Rucker Park yesterday, which was very cool. Like hung out and watched some pickup basketball at Rucker Park. Made it to Brooklyn to get some great Vietnamese food. I was staying in Manhattan because I was staying closer to the Garden. What else did I do yesterday? I did do the 9/11 museum, which I hadn't done yet. So yeah, but anyway, a lot of cool things. I made the most of it. I made the most of being in New York and being in New York an extra day. So hope you had a great trip too, Daniel. And I always much appreciate your support to the channel here, my friend. It is truly appreciated. All of you guys who have supported the channel that way, I really do appreciate it. Could not do it without you. I think we'll cut this one off a little bit shorter tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and head out of here, but I will leave you with the same reminders that I always do. Make sure that you spread the word about the channel via social media, via word of mouth to your friends, family, whoever it might, message boards, wherever it is that you can, to other fans of the Big 12, people you think would enjoy the content. Please let them know about it. Let's continue to grow this community, which has been growing. And I really appreciate you guys. It's a great community of Big 12 people here on this channel. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that. Click the bell so you get alerts and you know when I'm going live, you know when I'm dropping content. All of that helps as well. You can follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz. Support the channel on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. If you are so inclined and you did not catch this live, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, love me, hate me, tell me I suck, whatever it is, leave a comment. That would be great. I appreciate all of you guys being here. Glad to be back, and I will talk to you guys again soon.